How's it going, everyone? I wanted to do a tutorial today to show you how to take the virtual cab in your amp sim plugin and export it as its own impulse response. There's a lot of reasons you may want to do this. You may want to have that IR to be able to put or to load into your Helix or your Axe effects so that you can use it live. Or in today's case, what we're going to be doing is loading it into a different plugin that has a few different options for us to use. Now, before we start, a quick disclaimer. You can only do this if the plugin you're using has the ability to isolate the cab. And what I mean by that is if I pull up Amp Hub, which is what we're going to be using as our source, you can see down here in the signal path, I can turn off any one of the things in this path. So I can turn off the cab, turn off the amp, turn off the stomp box. That is what we want. But to contrast that in something like STL Tone Hub, for example, which is a great plugin, by the way, but because of the way they model the patches or the presets in this plugin, the cabinet model is kind of baked into the amp model, so you can't actually disable the cab, unfortunately. So you wouldn't be able to use this with a plugin like STL Tone Hub. You have to be able to bypass everything but the cab. So let's go ahead and take that off of there. And I'm going to pull up. Basically, the reason I've been doing this a lot lately is this new plugin from Bogren Digital called the MLC Subzero 100. I'm going to put a link in the description to Bogren Digital's website so that you can check this plugin out because it is awesome. I definitely recommend trying the trial they have of it. I won't get too in-depth on all the great things about this plugin, but the thing I really like about it is the cab section here has something called IRDX, which is a proprietary technology they've developed that basically adds real-time dynamics to the impulse response and makes it sound like a real cab is being played. So more on that here in a little bit. Let's just get started so I can show you how to do this. So I have just a simple guitar DI. I'm just going to bypass everything so you can hear just the raw DI. Cool. So like I said before, I'm running that through STL Amp Hub. I've just got it going through a Tube Screamer, a Meridian 65 Plus, which is basically a PV 6505 Plus. And then for our cab, I've got a blend between basically a Mesa Recto cab and an Angle 4x12 cab. So let's hear how that sounds. Cool, sounds good. So in order to capture this cab, what we're going to do is come down here to this next track. I need to delete that old one. And I've got a file in here called Impulse Tick. I will be providing this in the description of the video as well as a Dropbox link for you to download. Essentially, what this is just one sample length of white noise. And what we want to do is to feed that through the cab and then record it or capture it onto a separate track. And then that will become our impulse response. So how we do that is we're going to drag Amp Hub down here. Going to unmute the track. And what we want to do again is bypass everything but the cab. So let's turn off that amp, turn off the stomp box, and now we have just the sound of the cab. So, real quickly, let me bypass the plugin. This is what the Impulse Tick sounds like just by itself. It's basically just a blip of static noise. So when I turn on the cab and play it, it should sound relatively similar, just not quite as top end heavy. Oh no, we didn't hear anything. Why? Well, another disclaimer to be on the lookout for in your amp sim plugin is if you have a noise gate, definitely turn that off because otherwise the tick will not make it through that noise gate. So I've turned the gate off. Let's play it now. Cool. Sounds basically the same, just not quite as top end heavy, and that is what we want. So I'm feeding that to bus 1 here in Pro Tools. And of course, whatever DAW you're using, you can set this up pretty much in any DAW, just depending on what DAW it is. You may have to mess with the routing to get this to go to a different track. But I've got that bus 1 feeding into the input of my capture track right here. So we're going to set that to record and record it in. Oop. So now if I zoom in here, looks like we have, if you've ever looked at an impulse response waveform, it always looks something like this, and that is what we want. Now, I could just export that right now, but it would be extremely quiet. So what we want to do is actually normalize this. So I'm going to go to my audio suite, normalize, and I usually normalize to -0.2. You can normalize it to -0.1, -1, whatever you want to do, you know, just up to your judgment call there, I guess. So let's render that. Now it's going to be a little bit louder and give us the optimal amount of headroom when we load it into our IR loaders. So I'm going to rename this recto plus angle. And then I'm going to export it directly. And I've got a folder I've created just for this example. So export. So now we've exported that out, and we can come back here. Let me get rid of this window. Can come back here to our guitar track, and just one more time, just to let you hear where we're coming from. So to let you hear the original cab. Now we're going to load up. Well, before I do that, actually, let's bypass the cab in Amp Hub. And we're going to load up MLC. Unbypass it. We're going to bypass everything in MLC but the cab section. So I want to drag this slider all the way to the left to where the mix is 100% on this side, which, quick note, this is actually really cool. You can use this to blend between two different mics, two different impulse responses, or a mixture of both. But like I said, we're just going to be using this side. So I'm going to click over here and click Load IR. Go to my virtual or my example IRs, load that in. So now I've got that impulse response in MLC, and I have the IRDX technology engaged. So let's listen to what that's adding. Oh, make sure. Yeah, I did bypass the cab. Here we go. IRDX really adds a lot. I mean, especially in the low end to my ears, it just feels a little bit more dynamic sounding, like it's not just this static sound. And just to quickly make an example of that, I'll turn the IRDX off. Pay particular attention to the low end. Here's with it on. Now I am in headphones, so I can definitely hear that there's that difference in the low end there. Depending on your listening environment, the differences may be a little bit less to your ears, but at any rate, this same workflow should apply if you want to load the impulse response into a different plugin, or like I said, to a hardware processor. There's multiple reasons for wanting to do this, but yeah, this is a quick and easy way to get an IR out of any virtual cab you want. And if you have any other questions or any other comments, concerns, feel free to address them in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys later.